Inside Getting Started, when you scroll down to Settings for Payroll Data, there are two settings. One of them is called Target Per Stop for Payroll, and the other one is called Target of Average Stops Per Dispatched Driver. These are the top two metrics that if you focus on and master and perform and execute, you will be running a very profitable operation. So let's discuss them. The first one is target per stop for payroll. What does that mean? So let's say you take your settlement and including all the weekly guarantees per stop, per package, fuel surcharge, everything that they give you in your settlement. And let's assume you end up averaging $10 per stop. What you do is, the question then is, how much of that $10 do you want to spend in payroll? That is not including management, not including maintenance, not including worker compensation, taxes, or anything to that effect, just pure payroll per stop. Most of us try to stay in the low 40% ratio. So let's assume 44%. So 44% of $10 is the equivalent of $4.40. So that assumes you want to spend $4.40 per stop in payroll for drivers. The next thing is, how many stops do you want to average for every route that has been dispatched? This one is a little bit tricky to master, so you want to play with this and analyze your own operation accordingly. Because every operation has bulk routes, business routes, rural routes, dense routes, and a whole bunch of things that are essentially mixed. But the question is, if you're running 10 routes and you take those 10 routes and you average them and they are all running efficiently, what is the average number of stops inside every one of those dispatched routes? And that's the number you want to provide in here. So if you execute to perfection these two numbers, then you will be running a very, very profitable operation. And those are the two key metrics that we focus on inside planning, scheduling, and payroll data. Inside scheduling, when you are looking at your data, at the very top, there is this drop down that says estimate based on data from. You have the option to choose last week. You have the option to choose last 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or 8 weeks. What that is it will essentially average your DSW data purely based on stops. So based on last week DSW, this operation did 1141 stops on a Saturday. This is last Saturday. Had I chosen the last 8 weeks, it would have essentially averaged the last 8 weeks and given me the number over here. For most operations, DRO obviously is very inconsistent, but our historical data are a very good indicator of what we will be running this week. And that's what this estimated stop is supposed to master. So in this case, it says 1141 stops is estimated. Depending on how many stops you want to average per dispatched route, the system will tell you, or your manager, how many drivers are needed for that specific day. In this case, it's 9.5. You can schedule 10, you can schedule 9, you can schedule however many you want. But the key is, in order to average 120 stops per dispatched route, this is the number you want to try to target for that specific day. In this case, we can see we have 8 individuals that are scheduled to show up as drivers. The key is, as you start scheduling people inside the scheduling software and you click on save, it will automatically increase that number. And the same thing applies with anybody that is scheduled as a trainee, anybody that is scheduled on call. And what that is when you click on that box and you schedule a driver, if you select, let's say, in training, and you click on save, now when you go to the top, you can see there are 8 drivers that are showing up to work, and there is 1 individual coming in for training. If you have a policy or a procedure that wants to make sure there is somebody that is on the schedule on call every day, this is a great example of making sure that your company and your management team are always following that procedure. Managers are essentially anybody that is at the compensation level getting paid weekly. So if you call an individual a manager, but you pay them daily or hourly, that's not going to get calculated in here. So that person must be receiving compensation on a weekly basis. Then the next thing is, it essentially calculates how much payroll budget you have. What that does is it takes the 1141 and it multiplies it by how much you want to spend per stop in payroll. So it basically says out of 1141, let's say it's $1.60 per stop you want to spend, your budget for the day is $18.26. And this is very delegatable because you can teach your management team, hey, this is how much money you have on any given day, right? And all of this work is completely automated. Estimated payroll expense, what that is the system automatically takes the number of drivers and the number of trainees and calculates how much they are going to get paid. So if they get paid hourly, it will multiply their hour times the number of hours they're supposed to be working, and it will show that calculation. If they get paid daily, it will do the same thing. One distinction to be aware in here is if an individual gets paid per stop or there's threshold bonuses and so forth, the system cannot anticipate how many stops they're going to be doing above threshold. Or if you provide safety bonuses and threshold bonuses and pickup bonuses, that is not calculated in here, which is why it's essentially considered planning and forecasting, right? It's anticipation. It's not guaranteed that that's what it will be for that day, but it's supposed to be very, very close to reality. And after that, you basically get to see what the estimated net result is. So if you've done a good job, you should almost always be positive at the estimated net result. Is it possible that some days you're a couple $100 low and some days you're a couple $100 high? The answer is yes, because if you have a lot of trainees, or if you have too many drivers, or if the station notified you that, hey, tomorrow we're going to be super busy, that number could be higher or lower. But again, it's all about the fact that now you have a methodology that you can teach your managers or for yourself to be aware of what the day could potentially look like. If you know for a fact that tomorrow, as an example, which is a Saturday, you know you're not going to run 1141. All you got to do is change that to a higher number or a lower number. So if your station manager says, hey, tomorrow 4 extra trucks are arriving, or we're not going to get the volume that we anticipated, we're only going to get 400 stops, right? All you do is you change that because our historical data no longer applies, right? The system then instantly does the calculation and says, hey, you should bring in 3.3 drivers to work on that day, and your payroll budget is only $640. So you can see how valuable this is when utilized the way it's intended to be utilized. The last thing is planning it appropriately. So if I click on plan, you have the option to import the data from DRO. So every night when you're done with DRO, there is an export button for a CSV. So all you have to do inside DRO is export that CSV and click on import DRO. Once you import, the system will automatically understand how many stops DRO is stating you will receive for that specific day. For this exercise, I'm just going to go ahead and type in DRO says 350 as an example. So if I type in 350, and I'm estimating there are 400, right? My station manager called and said, hey, tomorrow we're going to do the 400. DRO says 350. Now, if DRO says this individual will do 100 stops, the multiplier will be 114. And that is a much more accurate data than because it's based on reality and based on historical data. So let's actually take this thing to a different level. And let's say it was 1141, which is what our system's historical data says is. And let's say DRO says we're going to receive 2500. These type of stuff happen all the time, as most of you guys know. And I'm going to go ahead and click on next or leave that. And now the multiplier comes down to 0.46. What that means is based on historical data, we do 1141. But DRO says, hey, it's going to be 2500. We trust our historical data much more than we trust DRO. So our DRO software automatically says it's going to be 46% of what DRO is saying. And again, all of this work is instantly automatically pre-populated if you import from your DRO and you have the appropriate work numbers and DRO numbers, DRO names inside the work planning, work area planning as we discussed earlier. So now when DRO says route FG14 or 4036 is going to receive 100 stops, right? Because you imported that data, our system will say, hey, this guy's only going to get 46, right? And that allows you to essentially be like, you know what? This guy can do more. He needs to do 85, right? You can go back to DRO and adjust your anchor areas and move some stops off one of the other areas to FG14 and then import the data again. And that will be very close to what reality will be in the morning. A couple other things. In here, you can see it says note for managers in the morning. So you can actually, let's assume you're not in the station or you have a DRO specialist that does all this work for you. Essentially, they can put in a note. In the morning, route 4036 will be super light. Maybe collapse 541 into 4036. Okay, that's basically note. So what happens in the morning, all of your managers that are in the management group, right? At the bottom, we have that management group. They will receive a text message saying, hey, this is the plan for the day. At the top, it will tell them, hey, today we're anticipating 1141 stops. DRO has anticipated 2500 stops. Pay attention to this note. This is the note. It'll basically tell them. And then it'll tell them that Alexander Yaki is showing up to work. He's going to be running route 4036. And we are anticipating him to run 46 stops. So when that driver walks up to the manager and says, hey, boss, how heavy am I today? Am I going to be heavy today? He can look at it on his cell phone and say, hey, I think we planned for 46 today, so let's see what happens, right? So now there's transparency across your entire management group and with your drivers. Of course, as we've discussed, the text message in the morning also provides the phone number for that driver. So that way, if your manager doesn't have the phone number of that individual, they can literally click on that number and instantly call that driver and say, hey, where are you? You're not showing up to work, right? They no longer have to keep bothering the AO or contact other managers and say, hey, what's the phone number for this individual? Last but not least, I'd like to talk about keeping your list of people very clean. So let's assume this individual is no longer with the company. All you or your managers have to do is click on the name and click on the status active and choose dismissed. Provide us the appropriate information. When were they dismissed? Should we do exit interview? Yes, no. Was there any type of assets assigned to this person? And then click on save. The beautiful thing about this is, as soon as this person is dismissed, this person is removed from scheduling. This person, we do an exit interview. This person is removed from payroll. This person is removed from payroll data. Essentially, all of the work automatically gets done, and a few other tasks could get created, such as send an email to my bookkeeper or my CPA or my lawyer or my BCs or my AO saying that this person is no longer with the company. And that task and that notification will provide all of those informations.